is Hannah, and I'm a representative of the More Progressive Agency, registered trademark. At this agency, we promote social justice, expand democracy, reduce corruption, clean up our growing urban centers, and give every American a square deal. Tell me about yourself.
Hi, I am Nellie Bly. I was born in 1864 in Pennsylvania. I grew up with little education, and I started journalism when I was just 21. I was hired on by the Pittsburgh Dispatch after I responded to a misogynistic article that was written for a column. I went to the New York World after growing out of the typical duties assigned to women at that newspaper, and that started my journey into investigative journalism.
Hi, I'm Helen Hunt Jackson. I was born in Massachusetts to my two Calvinist parents, where I was raised up by my aunt. I went to a private school where I met my lifelong friend, Emily Dickinson. At 21, I married my first husband, and we had 2 sons together, but tragically, they all passed. After that, I started writing poems and children's literature. I first was introduced into the Native American activism when I listened to a speech of a man called Chief Standing Bear, and that's how I got my start into the whole realm of activism and the progressive movement.
Why do you want this job?
I would like this job because I really want to bring more light onto the terrible treatment of the Native Americans and hopefully to put an end to it.
And I would like this job because I'd like to expand my reach in the progressive world. Having already made such a large impact, I'd hope to further my investigation only deeper into the corruption that is currentally going on in America.
Why should we hire you?
Okay, I believe you should hire me for this job because I am one of the first investigational journalists. I'm not afraid to go deep into the investigation, as shown by my Inside the Madhouse expose on the asylums of New York City, having to convince multiple doctors that I was insane and then spending 10 days in an insane asylum being treated as an insane patient. That showed the real dedication that I have to my work. I'm also not afraid to stand up for what's right, having traveled to Mexico for 6 months when I was 21 to show the culture of the people down there. I stood by another investigative journalist who had been imprisoned for his view in saying the leader was incorrect on them, and so I stood by them, and I believe that just shows how I'm a leader. So I think that's why you should hire me for this job.
I believe you should hire me for this job because I have already done so many things to help the progressive movement. I have written many nonfiction pieces that include the crimes and the U.S. policy and the corruption of the U.S. policy towards the Native Americans. Being a Century of Dishonor is what it was called. I also was a part of the Indian Rights Association. I wrote multiple times to President Cleveland to get the policy of the Native Americans to be changed. But I'm mostly well known for my book Ramona. This earned a lot of sympathy of U.S. citizens towards the treatment of the Native Americans.
What are your strengths?
My biggest strength is my ability to persevere. I've had a rough life with my husband and my 2 kids dying. Also, just within the progressive movement itself, because I am a woman, and so that just makes it harder to be heard and to be to influence someone. But even through all this, I know it'll all be worth it in the end.
I feel as though my strengths include my ability to expose all aspects of corruption and injustice faced by citizens, from the women's treatment by the police to the inadequate medical treatment that I exposed. I have covered it all, so I believe that is one of my strengths, that I can go from anyone to anything to try and expose.
What are your weaknesses?
One of my weaknesses is the fact that I am a woman, like I said before. Being a woman, there's a lot of backlash and just unnecessary conflict that comes with the job, but I do believe I am able to push through it and just be a better activist, a better woman. Yeah.
One weakness I believe that I have is my lack of education as a child. I only really went through one term of schooling after the elementary age years, and that was due to the lack of funds that my mother faced after divorcing her husband. And I feel like this comes into play later in life when I'm not the most literate or not the most able to convey my emotions in writing. But I feel like I make up for that in my bluntness and the way that I truly write, not being tethered down by writing correctly, but just writing how I feel and how I see it.
What would you say is your greatest professional achievement?
I would say my greatest professional achievement was my book, Ramona. This really gave me my platform in my audience that I would tailor all of my opinions and influence to. And so I'd say that would be my biggest achievement.
And I'd say personally my biggest achievement in journalism would have been my journey for investigating the women's lunatic asylum on Blackwell's Island in New York. I had to convince the doctors that I was crazy, which was quite the task. I also had to go undetected for 10 days, and just going through that process of experiencing the horrific conditions that these women were faced in was a real challenge on me. And one of the results of this was $8,500,000 was increased to the budget of the Department for Public Charities and Correction. So that really, I feel like, helped one of my biggest concerns with that insane asylum.
What would you say your greatest conflict is?
One of my biggest conflicts is that people sometimes don't take my work as I intended it to be taken. This just drives me to work even harder moving forward.
My biggest conflict is being a woman, and my experience with being a woman in the investigative field is that not everyone takes my opinion seriously or as valid as it should be taken. But I feel that I have persevered through this adversity, and therefore I have paved the way for future generations of young women who want to write the hard news rather than being given the delegated soft news, and they can go forward with the actual reporting. And I feel like I paved this way for them.
What is a time you exercised leadership?
I am a pioneer of what I do, so I am one of the first women Native American activists, and so I have to kind of make my own path and to pave the way for the people who come after me.
One of the ways I exercised leadership was in my trip to Mexico, where I reported on the lives and the cultures of people there. And being at such a young age, I showed my leadership with protesting the imprisonment of a local journalist. I feel like that just showed if I was standing for the right thing, then other people around me and other journalists could as well.
How would your boss describe you?
My boss would describe me as strong, not necessarily physically, but mentally, because I have been through so much, with my husband dying and my kids dying and then having to remarry. And then just all the setbacks I face being a woman activist, I definitely think strong is a good way to describe me.
I feel strong would also be a good way to describe me as well as compassionate. Only a person who is strong would be able to survive in investigation and journalism because of the things that we see and experience. But also we have to be compassionate to take in consideration the feelings, and that the people that we are reporting on are people as well, not just a story to be made.
Thank you. We will get back to you as soon as possible on whether or not you have been hired.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.